everyone. We're here with the Just Learn Crypto show, and we've got Andreas Antonopolous on today. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you, Sean.
Had a blast at the conference today. Great speech. It's one I haven't heard before, so it was really cool to hear something new and exciting. Right. And you had so many points that were relevant to Alberta, which was really cool.
I never do the same talk again because it's all improv, unscripted, and I only decide what I'm going to talk about the day of every event, and then it's all improvisation. So I really didn't know what I was going to talk about until 2 hours ago.
Sweet. Well, it came together really good. Definitely takes some balls to come to Alberta and tell them that solar and wind is the best energy.
I mean, you could burn dinosaurs, but then again, one of the advantages of Alberta is no matter how much sea rise you have, the worst case scenario is Alberta becomes a coastal state. But it doesn't get much worse than that. And long before that, New York drowns.
But we get more beaches.
More beaches. And also, did I mention New York drowns? I mean, some people might consider that a feature rather than a disadvantage.
Might boost tourism.
Tourism, yes, exactly.
No, hopefully not terrorism. So you've written a bunch of books, 7, if I'm not mistaken?
No, I've written 4 books so far, and I'm working on my 5th.
Okay, so maybe correct me then, but was your first book not the done in 2014 about like employees for cybersecurity? Didn't you write a book about that, or is that false info I got?
No, that's no, I haven't. My first book was Mastering Bitcoin in 2014.
Okay.
Then The Internet of Money Volume 1 and 2, which is just a collection of my talks for non-technical people. Mastering Ethereum last year. And now I'm working on my latest book, which is Mastering the Lightning Network, which I just announced a month ago.
So I saw the article and I read it, or I'm sure there was probably a few highlighting the release of the book. Is there anything you can tell me about the book?
So Lightning Network is a layer 2 technology on top of Bitcoin. It's fascinated me for the past 3 years. Okay. And when I was thinking of what book I should write next, I simply follow my passion. I follow the things that I find fascinating. Sometimes people don't agree, but I write books that I'm interested in. Yeah. So that's what I'm working on right now. Cool. Started working on it this month. Oh, wow. And it will be finished around this time next year.
That's exciting, man. Do you have a title for it yet?
Mastering the Lightning Network by O'Reilly Media.
Nice. That's awesome, man. So you're thinking 2020 it'll be out sometime?
2020 Q4, yeah.
Awesome. Can't wait. So other than
Can't wait, must wait, 2020 Q4.
Must wait. So I'm a big reader. I actually, for the last 3 years, I've pretty much dedicated my life to reading a book a week.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I love books.
And to touch on how I got into crypto quickly was all because of you.
Wow, thank you.
So I worked in door-to-door sales for most of my life. A couple of the companies I worked for ended up getting shut down, and I found myself out of luck, man. And I was there was a month where I was living in my car.
Oh, and, dear.
That's when I got into Bitcoin. Yeah. And Introduction to Bitcoin, your video was the first one I watched. And I don't think I slept for about 48 hours after. Dove into other videos, ordered your book off Amazon, and really, you pushed me. You shoved me down the rabbit hole.
Oh, Bitcoin did.
Yeah, you helped. You helped.
I helped. Yeah, okay.
I mean, so for someone getting new into crypto, I mean, my website, Just Learn Crypto, it's all about helping just normal people understand how to use the technology. Right. Because people don't necessarily need to know how the algorithms work, how blockchain works to use Bitcoin.
It's an experiential technology. You have to really use it in order to fully experience it.
Yeah. So what would be your first kind of on-ramp for someone getting in? Would it be a book, a video, or just doing a transaction?
I think doing a transaction is the most important thing you need to do, but also one of the things I try to do in my work is shift the perception of cryptocurrency as an investment vehicle and move it into something that you use as part of your job, which means that my basic advice is don't buy crypto, earn it. Yeah. Which means that you're dedicating your labor to this new economy. Absolutely. And that immerses you into the economy. Now, at first, when you try to earn Bitcoin, nobody's interested in paying you. An experience we've all had. Yeah. But stick with it long enough, and eventually someone will, and then you can receive your first crypto through the exchange of your labor. And the benefit of that is 0 exchange fees, 0 identification, and full immersion.
Absolutely.
So it's for me, it's one of the best teaching tools.
That's awesome. So that's pretty much was my first couple 2 years in crypto. So I was, like I said, down on my luck. How am I going to get some Bitcoin?
Yeah.
And, coming from a direct marketing sales side of things, I was like, I can sell anything. I've done door to door. I've sold stuff that I wasn't even passionate about and been amazing at it. So I started brokering Bitcoin through a company in Ottawa. So I was just earning a little bit of a commission in Bitcoin every time, and that was right at the end of 2016. So I was stacking Satoshis into 2017, and then getting into all these alts, and it worked out great for me. So it's such an important thing to do those transactions with people.
Yeah, and it switched your perspective to a long-term perspective rather than just kind of like in and out.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I always refer to it as kind of the drug dealer thing, where you give them the first hit for free. Here's a couple bucks of Bitcoin. Here's a website to check out, a book to read, and a video to watch. And then a few days later, you're usually getting a call like, how do I get into this more? This is so cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily use the drug dealer metaphor just because there's a lot of negative connotation around that, but like...
I use it lightheartedly.
How about a candy dealer?
Or a marshmallow dealer.
A marshmallow dealer, right.
What do you think right now, man, is like the biggest thing holding back crypto? I mean, we've seen prices upwards of 20,000 US, and we've seen, down to 3,200.
Yeah, nothing's holding crypto back. It's simply a matter of applicability in your current life circumstances, right? So if you don't need Bitcoin today, congratulations, you're among the privileged world that have working democratic and financial institutions.
Yep.
And so I wish on people that they don't have to use crypto.
Yeah,
but
I know
some
what you
people
mean by that,
use it and need it.
Right.
And for them, it's life-changing. So, we're currently at the stage of this technology where it's still very early days.
Yeah.
And the primary applications are evading corruption, dysfunction, and broken currencies. Mm-hmm. Now, to many, that doesn't seem like a worthwhile application. But that simply speaks to your ability to have functioning currencies.
Yeah, exactly.
So in the future, I think we're going to see more and more applications that are more relevant to people who have the means and the working institutions. And those are interesting. But for the time being, to me, this is about delivering choice and the freedom of choice to people who don't have a choice.
Absolutely.
And it's difficult to explain to North Americans what that means.
Because we have banks on every corner. We have apps that work. We have the way.
Although, even in Canada and the United States, the number of people who are unbanked or underbanked who live amongst us, who don't have access to financial services.
Have to use these third-party check cashing places that take 15% of their money.
So in that case, crypto is already applicable and relevant to their lives. So, especially among, in this country, I would say, immigrant and itinerant workers, First Nations, rural communities, et cetera, that don't have the benefits that your average middle class or upper middle class Canadian does.
So I want to touch on the First Nation community thing quickly. So we've got obviously Canada, October 11th last year, legalized cannabis. People in Canada are allowed to grow 4 plants in their house, transport within a minimal amount in their vehicles. And there's quite a few First Nation reserves where they have these like illegal dispensaries, right? Where a lot of the cannabis is going there from the black market going there.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that them using crypto in that scenario would be beneficial? Or do you think that, again, that would be bringing just negativity? Or do you think it's providing a service for these people that are unbanked living in these remote communities and stuff?
I think it's absolutely providing a service. I think one of the great shames of the legalization movement in the United States is that in states where it's being legalized right now, a whole bunch of already overprivileged, affluent people are entering into this area and building industrial scale operations that are extremely profitable.
Right away.
Meanwhile, there's 150,000 people sitting in jail, in prison, for minor nonviolent drug-related offenses. A couple of states in the United States have simultaneously taken the track of purging criminal records and pardons and releasing people who have been imprisoned. I think the great shame is that on the one hand, you have a war on drugs that lasted 16 years that very directly and deliberately penalized minorities, people of color, rural communities, et cetera, et cetera. And now that it's legal, the last people who can take advantage are the
people that were hurt by it,
who are hurt by it, and we still have this cynical, racist policy of keeping people in prison for things that other people are going to the stock market and IPOing for.
Couldn't agree with you more, man. It infuriates me every day just thinking that these people, like, there's so many people, like, I mean, that just mom and pops that could be taking advantage of this industry as well. In small, remote, rural communities that, where their corner store isn't doing great anymore. But guess what? This town of 1,200 people, 500 of them smoke weed. And could be coming and rejuvenating
a high profit agricultural product.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So,
and the cynicism goes both ways, because, like, for example, in the United States, there's giant cultivations of tobacco that are incredibly harmful for the vast majority of society, right? And cause hundreds of thousands of deaths every year.
Minimum.
And that's perfectly legal. And yet, this isn't. So, I mean, it's cynical, it's calculating, it's fundamentally racist, and it's a mess.
But maybe a step in the right direction from prohibition.
I mean, any form of removing prohibition is a step in the right direction. The problem is you have to make reparations to the communities that were harmed in deliberately racist policies. In order to, like, in the US, it's even more horrifying because it was a deliberate policy to disenfranchise people from voting in a way to shift the political landscape. And, if you don't believe me, listen to the Nixon tapes, right? It's all right there. This was not an accidental policy. It was targeted specifically at suppressing the African-American vote in the United States, and it was an incredibly effective policy. So the war on drugs did not stop drugs, but it succeeded beyond the wildest dreams by enriching the manufacturers of violence, imprisonment, the carceral state, and destroying the voting capabilities of minorities who were doing the exact same thing that white middle-class people were doing and getting away with it. That's the policy, and you can't fix that simply by removing prohibition. You have to make reparations to those communities that were harmed.
Do you think we're going to see that?
I mean, it's very difficult. In Florida, they passed a voter proposition to change felony disenfranchisement and re-enfranchise felons. And even though that was a popular proposition passed by the population of Florida, the first thing the state legislature did was undermine the law and reverse it in practice. So,
we'll see. Stepping stones, right?
I'm not that confident that we're going to see justice in this space, but
it's going to be tough, man. I highly doubt we'll see it either. So, well, back to crypto, man, because that's my love. That's my big love, right? So, obviously, we've got a pile of shit all over the crypto community right now. Just piles of shit coins, things that no one should be touching, things that have taken the teeth off people, scammed people, manipulated people. And it's been going on for years. We're seeing it coming up again. I mean, we went through the BitConnect thing, and a lot of people lost their hats on that. USI Tech, and now there's still more. They're coming out of China. We're hearing about billion-dollar dumps of Bitcoin happening, you know, from funds from these Ponzi schemes. Do you think they're ever going to go away?
The only way to make those things go away is through education of investors. The problem is that investors who are not educated in evaluating these risks will continuously keep falling for these kinds of schemes.
I know.
And you can't fix that by vetting participants. You can't do that in a global world.
It's the get-rich-quick mentality that people have.
But you have to train people that that's not actually real. And unfortunately, one of the ways that people get trained is by losing money.
It is.
It's a very effective lesson, because if you tell people who are involved in a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme that it is a pyramid or Ponzi scheme, they don't want to hear it. And if you try to make it illegal, all you're doing is you're empowering the people who decide what is and what isn't legal, and they'll say, okay, this is illegal because it's a Ponzi scheme, but this isn't illegal because it's Bernie Madoff and he's a very trusted member of the regulatory commission for hedge funds. What you do is you give the power to vet to people who then
abuse the power.
They don't abuse the power, but the organizations you built to vet attract people who are attracted to the power, who then abuse it, right? So that's the fundamental problem. And the other problem is that any form of vetting or regulation around investments ends up removing the ability to invest from a whole bunch of people. So the side effect of that is economic exclusion. And that's not an acceptable side effect, right? You know, on the one hand, you're like, we need to protect Canadian consumers from scams. It's like, if the way you protect Canadian consumers from scams is by condemning 5 billion people to poverty because they have no investment opportunities, that's not a price worth paying for. It's only a price worth paying for if you can, like, shield yourself from consequences and, you know, build a wall on your border to prevent all of those Americans from coming north.
I think that was one of the
Which is what's going to happen next.
It is. And I think that was one of the most kind of exciting and one of the most eye-opening things for me about the ICO market in 2017 was just how the ease of access that anyone with a smartphone was able to get into an ICO. And I mean, inevitably...
Which in the long term is really exciting. It's an industry that can offer access to investment opportunities to everyone and access to investors and capital to any startup anywhere in the world without barriers. In order to get there, you have to build new infrastructure for trust. So the real question is, how do you solve the problems of fraud and trust and reputation in a market that is nascent? My answer is, if you're trying to protect against fraud and decentralized systems, the solutions you have to provide must be decentralized solutions. If you have fraud and programmable money, you solve that with programmable trust. You don't solve that by creating a committee that decides to vet things in a centralized way. So we can't solve modern problems with ancient solutions.
Of course,
we need to create new solutions based on the same technology with the same characteristics, so that we can then take full advantage of and get the full potential of these new technologies, right? So it's like, if you introduce cars into a market where everybody rides horses, inevitably the first thing is going to happen is you're going to run over a lot of pedestrians, right? Which is exactly what happened. And then you need to create new rules. Well, the new rules are not to make the cars go as slow as horses. The new rules is to change how you construct cities and roads and things like that.
Flow the traffic.
So the pedestrians and horses and cars can coexist. Now, don't get me wrong, in many ways we failed in that. In many societies, that's led to cars dominating. But the point is that even in that space, the initial reaction was to try to slow down cars to the speed of horses. All that does is destroy the opportunity of that market to evolve, right? So again, modern problems require modern solutions. And there is a knee-jerk reaction among regulators where the thing they know is how to regulate the old thing. And so when the new thing comes along, they try to somehow kind of squeeze it into this bucket. It doesn't work.
Exactly. Are there any projects right now that you're looking into, or, and I'm not even talking obviously about investing or anything, but just any technologies out there other than Bitcoin and Ethereum that
well, Lightning, because I'm writing that.
Other than Lightning too, maybe?
So, you know, the problem is that all of the technologies that I don't talk about are not technologies that I don't think are worth talking about. They're technologies where I don't have enough knowledge to make an informed opinion and express that opinion. I can only follow
the stuff you know.
The stuff I know, and I can only learn and follow the changes as fast as they're happening in a number of specific fields. That doesn't mean that the other things are not worth it, but
it's an amazing non-answer. I love it.
I mean, I can go and express opinions without foundation or research or knowledge.
Just might bite you in the ass later.
But then that's disingenuous and it's shilling. So I don't want to. I'm very careful about how I navigate this space, because if people give credibility to what I'm saying, that's a double-edged sword, right? And if I abuse that credibility by expressing opinions on things that I'm not informed on, that's doing a disservice to the people who trust me.
Absolutely, man.
I try not to do that.
So I want to talk really quickly about the last question you got today with the crypto kid.
Yeah,
so
it was good.
great. I mean, I love that kid. I follow his YouTube channel. He's got such great energy. Me and Ken met him on a cruise last year, and just like I like the simplicity of your answer, and it's kind of the premise of my website is to have a grandma-proof crypto education,
Right.
something where anyone you would be comfortable sending your mother, someone to the website where they make sure they don't get scammed and they can just learn the basics about it.
Right.
Can you maybe reenact your answer to his question of, I just got 1 Bitcoin, I'm a 9-year-old girl, however old that kid is, 9-year-old kid.
Who has a Bitcoin at 9 years old? I'm like, are you serious? That's ridiculous. Well, he asked me, what would you do? Would you hold it or spend it? And I'm like, if I really put myself in the shoes of a 9-year-old, I'm going to buy $11,000 worth of ice cream and try to eat it in one night. Then I'll get a tummy ache and I won't have any Bitcoin anymore.
What should you do, though?
What should you do is, there's this double-edged sword, which is if you give too much responsibility to someone who doesn't have yet the maturity to exercise that responsibility, there's a very good chance they're going to blow it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the only way to develop maturity is to be given the responsibility and the possibility of blowing it without guardrails. Eventually you have to go from the training wheels.
You got to skin your knee once or twice.
To skin your knee.
Yep.
And so I think it's fascinating that some parents, at least, are trying to encourage their children to take responsibility by giving them the opportunity to be completely irresponsible. And that's...
Yeah, and I've seen it quite a bit. You see, when you're in the community on social media and you're following, different people, they start, I've seen it so many times, them getting their kids involved, their kids asking for their allowance in Bitcoin. And I think it's such like a cool preview into what the next 10, 15 years might be in the space.
Well, I mean, there's this really weird situation where today, in most countries in the world, the minimum age you can get a bank account or have any access to money that you control is either 16 or 18.
16 or 18, yeah.
Right. What does that say about the culture that we're building? Because, the truth of the matter is that 12-year-olds get smartphones.
Yep.
And they're then exposed to the full range of responsibilities of being exposed to the internet and social media and all of the other things. Like, in a certain way, it reminds me of this ridiculous dilemma or discontinuance we have in the United States, where an 18-year-old can spend a tour in Afghanistan but can't have a beer. Like, there's something really fucked up about
so messed up.
The you will be trained to kill someone with an assault rifle, but you're not considered responsible enough to have a beer.
How dare you drink fermented fruit, though?
Fermented fruit. And so the bottom line is, if you understand as a parent that today 12-year-olds will have access to the internet and smartphones, if you don't allow them, they'll have them unsupervised through their friends, and they'll hack into your Wi-Fi router because they're more technically adept than you are, unless you're a security expert. And so the only way to prepare people for that responsibility is giving them the chance to make mistakes. And so you can't have that access to information and at the same time say you can't manage your money.
You need to fail forward, right?
You have to fail forward. So I think it's really important to train children in managing money. In fact, I think it's weird that in society we don't train children to manage money.
We don't ask questions about money.
I didn't know anything about compound interest and diversifying portfolios and investing, and
it's not something they teach
even
in
just
school.
paying my credit cards and knowing how to manage my bills until I was in my mid-20s. That's not a good time to learn those skills.
But I mean,
because at that time,
I feel like, and we've all heard the saying that, modern slaves are in debt, they're not in chains. And I feel like the curriculum is designed so that these kids end up in debt really quickly. And, then they're kind of trapped and they're stuck working a job they hate to pay off debt that they have, or they're, overextended and they're stuck working, being just a cog in the system. And I mean, maybe I'm a conspiracy guy, but I wouldn't put it past like an education board to be like, hey, let's not teach these kids as much as they need to know to maybe be smarter than us.
I don't take it that way. I mean, it's not a matter of cynicism. It's a matter of failure of expectations and failure of planning. it's often a lot easier to attribute something to malice when in fact it should be attributed to stupidity or lack of planning.
Fair enough. So you're a pretty well known guy in the crypto space. I'd say you're one of the most well known guys. You speak, you constantly travel, you speak at do you have a number of how many times you've spoken at events? Have you kept track of that?
I don't know, but it's like probably 300 or 400 talks that I've given so far.
Wow, that's amazing,
in 7 years.
Was there a point when you realized, like, I'm a celebrity now? Like, I'm in this community? I mean, was there one video that changed things for you? And was this even your plan coming into this community? Or
I think probably the thing that changed things for me was my first appearance on Joe Rogan, where he exposed me to an audience that was much bigger than I'd had before.
Yeah.
And then my life got very weird, very, very fast. And it was honestly quite scary. That year was within a couple of weeks, was the first time someone asked me to sign an autograph and take a photo. 2014.
Okay.
The beginning of 2014,
okay.
End of 2013. And yeah, my life got very, very weird. And so at that point, I mean, I had to think very hard if I wanted to continue to do the work I do with all of the negative things that come from being recognized by random people.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for good reasons.
Yep.
And so, but I mean, honestly, I get to do something that is a vocation, something that I love.
Yeah.
And the reason I get to do that is because people know me and support me in a broad community.
Yep.
So it's one of those things where I really am passionate about what I do, and I really love doing what I do. So I wouldn't have it any other way.
You're doing it the right way, man, because we look at anyone.
Sometimes I try, but it's
no one's perfect.
Certainly not.
But I mean, you look at any other big name in the crypto space right now, people either love Roger Ver or hate Roger Ver.
Oh, lots of people hate me too.
I don't see it though.
Maybe
I'm in the wrong chat threads, but
here's the thing. Man. Anybody who has any work in this space will immediately create a very polarized response.
Alberta might hate you now since you told them oil was not the greatest energy. But, so I mean,
only the people who love oil.
There's quite a few of them.
I'm okay with that.
I just moved to this province like not even 6 weeks ago. So coming from Ottawa, which is, you've been to Ottawa, it's the most government minded place of Canada, to coming out here where it's very, very different, very entrepreneurial and tech centered. And so right now you're living as a nomad, kind of going around from Airbnb to speaking engagement. Yeah. And 10 years from now, where do you see yourself being? Do you think you're still going to be doing that?
I don't ever look out that far, okay. Honestly.
Fair enough.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I hope I'm lucky enough to continue to do the work that I love.
Yeah.
And to impact people in a positive way, but most importantly to be able to be true to what I care about.
Okay.
And as long as I have the energy to do that, I'll keep doing it. This is an amazing ride.
Yeah.
And I'll take it for every year that it lasts.
That's awesome.
And then whatever, there's going to be a next chapter, but
absolutely,
I'm having a blast.
I hope so, man. It's great to be able to travel around. Well, thanks for coming on the show, man. I can't even say how much I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I'm getting to meet someone I look up to so much, and to actually be able to sit down and have a one-on-one talk with you, man, it's been great. Everyone, check out the book. Grab some books on Amazon. Watch some videos from Andreas. It's one of the most comprehensive ways to learn the basics of Bitcoin. And we'll hopefully see you again soon, man.
If you don't mind, I want to make a quick point, which is that all of my work is done under open licenses. I believe in the free culture of knowledge.
Okay.
And so you don't need to buy my book on Amazon. You can read it online for free. And all of my work, my videos, my books, translated, all of that is available for free. Wow. So if you find a PDF of my book online and you download it and you're like, oh, I feel guilty because the dream of an author is not to have buyers. Yeah. The dream of an author is to have readers. Okay. So if you read my book and don't buy it, that is 1,000 times better than buying my book and not reading it.
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
And I have loads of people who are like, I bought your book. And I'm like, did you read it? No, not yet. Okay, well, read it and come back to me. You didn't need to buy it, right? So, for your audience, this stuff is available. It's out there. It's something that I feel proud of, but it's also something that can help you learn. And if it's useful to you, it's free. So I don't want people to think that they have to buy something or do something in order to gain access to that knowledge. This is not about selling more books.
Cool.
But thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure show.
Thanks so much,
Thank
man.
you.
Take care. Take care, everyone.